The real cost of buying a home can go way past the sales price, which is a bummer because you'll save this hefty deposit, find your dream home, get that mortgage pre-approved, and then have the unexpected costs that can make the process more about stress than celebrations. Welcome to Ask the Experts, where each week we talk to people in the industry and get that inside word on what's happening right now, what that means for the tactics you should be using to make the most of your money. And today, we're stripping away the headlines, digging into the costs that aren't as obvious. Now, there are surprises that can hit hard if you're unprepared, but if you know what's coming, it makes the whole process so much easier. So, then you can go back to popping champagne instead of stress pimples. And I've got the wonderful Vanessa Williams from realestate.co.nz. She's breaking this all down for us. Making Sense is partnered with realestate.co.nz to get you the info you need in today's market. Property hunting can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster with its fair share of stress. That's where realestate.co.nz comes in. They've been helping Kiwis buy, sell, and rent since 1996, and their app is designed to make it easier and faster. What sets them apart? Flexibility. Realestate.co.nz gives you so many ways to search and so much information to help you make decisions. Realestate.co.nz. Download the app today. Making Sense is on a mission to make money simple, and I just couldn't do that without the support of Kiwi Bank. It's really important to me to only work with companies that understand that mission. And for Kiwi Bank, their purpose is to help Kiwi and Aotearoa be better off. So bringing you real stories of different approaches to finance is one of the ways they're making a difference to the lives of their customers. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwi. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. And I love the idea of popping champagne rather than stress pimples.
Which one would be better, right? Which one would we rather? I'm going champagne.
100%. I totally agree with you on that one.
All right, look. What would you say are the biggest ones that can crop up for people when they think they've got it nailed down? They're going in for that house and then some unexpected costs come up. What are the common ones?
Yeah, and I think sometimes they are can be unexpected, but also let's just talk about the expected costs first, because what I find, well, actually, I've been crowdsourcing a little bit, chatting to our team at realestate.co.nz and going, come on team, what are some of the costs that you kind of hadn't thought about when you were purchasing a home? So the number one that came up was around legal fees.
Oh, yeah.
So that can be anywhere depending on where you are in the country, sort of the experience that you're looking for, what type of property it is as well. That can be anywhere from maybe $1,000 right up to sort of $4,000 or $5,000. What the team actually had said to me, which I thought was a fantastic idea, is you can actually negotiate before you send it to any lawyer and actually getting a fixed cost.
Yes.
So if you do have a set budget in mind of around, right, when I'm purchasing this property, I'm going to allow however much money, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But if you sort of go, let's actually look at fixed cost of what I can actually get fixed from the beginning. So that would probably be one that I would say as a piece of advice. Have a chat to your lawyer, maybe have a chat to a few more lawyers, because there's also ones popping up around the country who will just do this as a job. Like there are building inspectors, and that probably pulls me right nicely onto my second unexpected, but I would say I really hope our listeners, especially with all that beautiful knowledge they've had from listening to this podcast, would know that you definitely don't want to purchase a house without doing a building inspection. You just do not know what's coming out under those beautiful piles, or
under a few hundred, save potentially tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 if you've really messed up. I know people don't want to spend too much, but that's when you should, right?
Oh, absolutely, because you just do not want to be in a position where you've got your dream home, you're really exciting, and then you find out that you need a new roof. And that champagne instantly turns into street pimples.
Yeah, that's definitely, you're getting stress pimples then, 100%.
Yeah. So have a think about that as well. And again, have a shop around, chat to some people. There's actually a difference between even getting a written report versus a verbal report. So you might even want to turn up at the house. If it's something that you think, actually, this is a pretty newish house, I just really want to kind of have a look over it, make sure there's nothing too scary there. You might go, actually, a verbal is fine. I'll go with the builder and we'll actually chat through different bits and pieces. If you're perhaps looking at an older home or something that you might just have a few like, I wonder, maybe get a written report. Because again, those types of costs, I would call them investments, if I'm totally honest with you, that will help you perhaps when you're having a chat to the real estate agent around negotiating, going, well, look, actually, this wasn't disclosed. Because the beauty of having a real estate agent who's marketed that property as well, what you do need to remember is anything they know about that property, they have to disclose to you.
Yeah.
So any vendor that say, oh yeah, well, it might need a new roof in the next couple of years anyway, because we've been, as soon as the vendor has told that real estate agent, under the law, they have to disclose that to you as well. So, feel free to ask the questions, but most real estate agents will have that in the documentation. The other thing I would say is around, you might need a valuation for your bank. So something to think about there. The other piece is around if you've got any inkling around maybe asbestos or perhaps methamphetamine previously in the house. Those are tests that you can get done at relatively, well, they're cost effective. They sort of, depending on which part of the country you're in, but again, you probably want to look to $1,500 to $3,000 for one of those sort of tests, depending on how invasive you really want it. But again, it's just really good to be thinking about these kind of costs.
I love what you've mentioned so far, because on all of these so far, we've got quite a wide range of costs, right? And this is the problem, is in keeping some cash aside for these things. It's a bit of a blank check, but even in what you've laid out so far, it's really that value of negotiating and seeing how much do you actually need. You can negotiate with the lawyer. You can try and get that fixed fee set up. You can also talk to the builder and say, can we do a verbal or a written, depending on how worried you are about the house and how much you're looking to spend. And I feel like I wear on about this on this podcast. I've done so much on this recently in terms of negotiate, talk to people, say, hey, if I'm looking for a good deal, what can we do to set up a good deal? And just throwing that question out there of, hey, budget's a bit tight. What's the best way to do this? Do you do any deals? Or, is that the best price? How do we get the best price? Isn't it amazing how even in this situation, even talking to lawyers, even talking to building inspectors, that this is actually still another time where you throw that question out there, right?
Absolutely. Like, the worst they can say is no. My fixed price is on the website. Look at the website. That's what I do. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I'll go with somebody else who's willing to be a little bit more accommodating. Because look, I think also what you've got to remember is in an economy like we are in today, a more challenged economy, people are also looking for work.
Yes.
So if you can make a deal work between both of you, you're trying to purchase a new house, those aren't cheap. And, there are also builders and lawyers out there that perhaps need a few more odd jobs here and there that, that's not particularly, most of these things are pretty stock standard as well. They know what they're looking for. They've done it 100 times over. They've seen property contracts thousands of times over. So I completely agree with you. Ask the question. Say, look, I'm shopping around for a property lawyer to help me with my purchase. Do you do fixed costs? What does that look like? And what do you offer for that? And look, hey, is there anything you can do for me? This is my first home, or this is my, I'm having to upgrade because I'm a growing family. Can you help me out? You'd be amazed at the amount of people who say yes.
Yeah, 100%. Just have the conversation. Like you said, they can say no. That's totally their prerogative. You mentioned the asbestos and methamphetamine contamination. And I know they can be absolute nightmares. They can also be, there's one of those areas where I feel like it's quite emotive, and it can be one where it gets overhyped. That doesn't mean you can ignore it. Where's the line on this? Do we actually need to do it? And how do we know if we actually need to do it?
You're so right. Like, it can be a real headline sort of meth testing's gone crazy. And I remember, what would that have been, about maybe 8-9 years ago, where it felt like
it was such a thing.
And
everyone was talking about meth testing.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And it felt like every second news article was about someone who got ripped off by, meth being smoked in the house, and therefore, et cetera, having to re-gut all this. And what I would say is go back and do your research about what that actually means. Because I think at the time when we knew so little about it, it was overhyped and people were perhaps going to extremes on the renovation that they thought that they had to do because of those tests. It's dialed back a lot since I'll call it the boom of the meth testing era. Asbestos, you probably want to look at something like that in houses sort of pre-1970s. And again, chat to your building inspector, understand the age of the house and then say to the building inspector, and if they maybe when you're negotiating or asking, look, I'm actually looking in the area. A lot of houses are actually built in the 50s, as an example. Is asbestos testing or something that you do as part of this? Is it something that you would recommend? But again, I would just sort of say it does not have to be for every house. It's really if you think that there is reason to be suspicious around it. And then again, I would say when you're looking for a supplier of those building inspection, just look at the reviews as well on Google or what you can find, because I'm sure there will be credible, awesome building inspectors in your area who are great. They know the area, they know the type of houses that are there. And look, if you've got a particular suburb or an area that has been built with asbestos in mind, chances are not their first rodeo. They've done this before. They're like, actually, what you're looking at here is this, this, and this. The cost of that equals this, this, and this, and again, they will sort of say, look, you need to get a proper test done, but let me just help you to understand a little bit more about this, especially if they're local.
Find the perfect property faster with realestate.co.nz, the home of property. Realestate.co.nz allows you to search the way you want, based on your budget, the location, the type of house. You can even draw on the map to find properties in a specific area. You can filter by price range, number of bedrooms, even keywords like brick and tile. If you're keen to avoid buying at auction, you select to view houses with the price displayed. That's super helpful, especially if you're using your KiwiSaver. When you've narrowed down your search, realestate.co.nz will alert you when a new property that matches it hits the market. Download the realestate.co.nz app to find your perfect property faster. Life looks different for everyone. Maybe you're buying your first home, growing your whānau, dreaming of travel, or simply trying to stay on top of things. KiwiBank has the tools to help you manage your money your way. Find out more at kiwibank.co.nz. This is making Kiwi better off. This is Kiwi. Speaking of that, on those older homes, that can be, sometimes things can pop up with those. And I'm thinking sort of like cladding issues, sometimes leaky home issues. Things can pop up on there that are a little bit of a nightmare. So is there red flags on those issues of things you should be looking for? How much that could set people back? Where do you go on those older home issues?
Yeah, the older homes, as someone who does own an older home herself, and I kind of think, oh my goodness, there's always something that does need doing, right? That's just the reality of the life that I choose to lead.
Beautiful character house, money pit.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a kind of a rough guideline around if you can look to keep aside or invest, I would say, back into your property about 1% of the value every year. When you're sort of thinking about how much do I want to look at in the future, right now when you were buying, again, that's where you want to make sure that you get yourself a really good understanding what actually goes wrong with this decade of home.
Right.
How do I make sure I know, the key piece is knowing about it, right? If you're walking in, I want a character home, I'm happy to put 1, maybe even 2% of my value of my home into making sure I'm looking after my investment. But you know that, right? So that's where the power comes from.
Go in eyes open. It's fine. Go in not realizing you might be right at the top of your budget and now you've got problems.
Exactly. And you haven't got any spare there to kind of go, oh my goodness, what do you mean the hot water cylinder is 105 years old and it needs replacing? Oh, and then all of the pipes do, because the new hot water cylinders don't work with the pipes that are in my house, and then the taps need replacing. And
this is feeling very specific.
I feel like we've got a bit of PTSD from a few things. But look, again, it's about understanding the beauty of those changes, what that means. And as I said, you did right. Go in eyes wide open. And that, again, I come back to these beautiful building inspectors are going to solve all of our problems for us. But again, have those conversations, because again, if they're local, again, if there's a lot of houses in the area you're looking at, they will probably be also the people that are doing the work on some of these homes. So not only will they be able to highlight it to you pre-purchase, but they'll be able to kind of go, look, I've just done the house up the road, hot water cylinder, pipes and new taps is around XYZ thousand. Just be mindful of that. You're probably looking all right now, but at any time, something could change in that market.
Yeah, I tell you what, the inspection is so great. And especially when we sold our very first home in Wellington, it was your classic first home. The realtor who sold it for us was so sweet. They called it a Marmite house in terms of some people will absolutely love it and everyone else is going to absolutely hate it. I said, that's a very diplomatic way of saying that this house is definitely not for everyone. But it was our first home and we loved it, and it was what we could afford also. But the person who got us, we ended up doing a building report to offer to buyers to make it a bit easier, because it was in one of those markets where that really helped at that time. The guy that we got to come in to do it was the guy who'd also done the building inspection when we bought it, and he'd also done the inspection for the people who had it before us. So because he was local, he had this actual history with the house, and he was able to pick up on things like, oh, how's this going? Oh, yeah, I checked on that last time and it was fine, and it's maybe a bit dicey now. And are you going to fix that? Oh, you're going to fix that? Okay, I'll put in the report that it's been all done up now. And it was kind of great because he was local. He knew this history with the house. And I think New Zealand's one of those places where that does happen. We're quite a small country.
And so smart, I'll just say this now, so smart as a seller, you're offering up information to make that buying journey easier, right?
Yeah.
So you're putting less to your Marmite house. So you're kind of going to, right, how do I attract as many buyers as I can? If you're making that process easier for buyers and offering up that information, and also what it allows you to do is you can get ahead of understanding what things might need fixing.
Yeah.
Before you're even putting your property on the market.
Which we 100% did. So actually, yeah, that's a really good point in terms of we're in a buyer's market at the moment, FYI for those listening. We are, anything you do to make it a bit easier for people, yeah, it does help, doesn't it? I should do a thing on that. Things that I've done to sell houses in my time. Not that I've sold that many.
But still, there's a lot of people who, I still haven't sold a house. I've only bought. So, I'm
long-term holding queen.
I'm always about listening and, interesting, should I choose to sell? Yeah, I think it's great.
There you go. And I can also say now when I tell people, it's one thing to say how much a house is worth. It's another thing to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. Have experienced that. Okay. So if we've got people who are looking to buy and they're thinking, okay, I've got my budget. I'm wanting to buy. I'm wanting to go unconditional. What would you say? Are there any majors, whether we've talked about them or not so far, what would you say are the majors for them to think about to make sure that their budget doesn't get derailed at the last minute?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, again, those building inspectors, I know we keep harping on about it, but I just can't sort of share how important those are. And then again, off the back of that, what will you need to do to either negotiate with that seller at that point, or what will you need to do when you do own the house over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, and making sure that you have factored that in. We're in an awesome situation now where interest rates are going backwards, which is great. I mean, we don't know. We just saw, last night they're sort of saying that inflation's kind of creeping back up to that 2.7 mark. That gets a little bit nervy. So, we don't want to get into a position where interest rates are higher again. But again, if that does happen, what does that look like for your view around renovations? And because that will take up some more money that perhaps you've got available for those renovations. But yeah, when you're talking about that negotiation piece, the key piece really in that area will be if there's any issues with the property, its structure, or sort of any key pieces, roofing, cladding, as you said earlier, if there is any sort of areas that have been highlighted as a challenge, the likes of perhaps, if it has, people have used methamphetamine in the house before, or you mentioned before, leaky homes as well, if it's perhaps built between, say, 95 or sort of early to mid 90s to sort of early to mid, it's not noughties, is it? Is it noughties? What's the zeros? Like 2005?
I think they were saying noughties. I don't think we ever really settled on it, to be honest.
Yeah, we didn't. That sort of 10-year period where, again, a building inspector will, especially someone who specialises in that time bracket, they'll be able to help you out with those are the key pieces. But those are the key pieces that perhaps when you are getting down to that negotiation piece is that you'll need to meet the vendor with and go kind of, like, look, this is what we found. What do you, understand? And let's have a conversation about how we get to an agreement so we get the market met so that we're both happy.
100%. Love it so much. Thanks. Vanessa Williams from realestate.co.nz, our data queen, breaking it down for us as always. Now, if this episode was helpful to you, don't forget, hit subscribe before you go. Making Sense is on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, everywhere you listen to your pods. And of course, send it to a friend so we can all get smarter with money together. Until next time, have a great day. Just a note before you go, this podcast can only give you general information about how things work in most cases. It's not individual financial advice. We're all different, so some of this might not apply to your specific situation. Take what works for you, ignore the rest. If you're after individual financial advice, a financial advisor is always the best bet.